It is Friday, February 21st, 2020. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. It was a very interesting get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Friday. A little bit of kicking ass, a little bit of getting my ass kicked. All in balance. It's amazing how that works. But yeah, a lot of fun today. A little bit of a refresher on a previous thing that we did, and it was kind of it was an interesting like lapel choke, but it's from the lower end of the lapel, where you like pull it out through the belt, and then you pull it up behind the back, and then you do this really interesting shoulder throw, and end up choking your opponent. I'm sorry I'm being so vague about it, but I'll be honest with you, I had a lot of trouble with it. I could have done with like 8,000 more repetitions of that one, because I was having difficulty with getting my legs properly entangled with my opponent to where I would get them kind of flipped over. And it's just an odd thing. I didn't even know if I had the right quarter guard, because it starts from like a quarter guard position where your opponent has you in a quarter guard position. And so, yeah, had a lot of difficulty with that. But one of the interesting things today, though, is I end up rolling with certain people almost pretty much every time. There's some occasions where there's some mix up with it. Now, I do enjoy those as well. But anyway, there's two guys that I tend to end up rolling with, and one of them he's a younger gentleman, so I don't really expect him to be like valued already or anything like that. But I will say this: the kid is good, and I really think that he's starting to pick up his body position, his positioning and whatnot. And I tried to facilitate that a little bit more myself today, where I was trying to get sweeps and whatnot from a downward position, as opposed to being on the top, and trying to work my way out of a guarded position, keeping my opponent in my guard, and of course trying to sweep them. But I kind of made it almost to a triangle with him. I did get him in an arm triangle, and I think I got him in two other things. Like I know I got him in one other choke, and I think I got him in either a Kimura or a Americana. But I ended up getting caught in a fucking Americana today too. So, all things kind of work out, I suppose, right? But anyway, the gentleman that got me in the Americana, or no, Kimura, no, Americana, yeah, wasn't Americana. Anyway, I ended up rolling with him quite a bit, and he's a little bit bigger than me, and I like that, because rolling with somebody my size is difficult enough. Finding somebody my size to roll with is difficult enough. And, of course, there are people that are slightly smaller than me that are way more skilled than I am. So, it's one of those things where even the size differential doesn't give me any advantage. But this gentleman that I rolled with, I've had an opportunity to feel his game kind of evolve over time. And I did manage to do one thing that kept me from losing my positive position early, but I ended up losing it anyway. He got me in a fucking Americana. But it's gonna happen, and honestly, I was very excited that it did happen, because it shows me that he's learning, that he's getting a game, and like I said, I felt really pressured by him pretty much the whole time. I managed to reverse the situation twice, and in those two times, I think I got him once in one thing or another. I don't remember what it was, but I got him in an Ezekiel choke too. So altogether was very productive. Had a lot of fun and very interesting. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down into some music. As far as where we're going to go on subject matter, I've got a loose outline, but that's about it. You know how we roll. We find our way though. Anyway, as far as where to start, I've been wanting to drift a little bit away from Bloodlust because we're going to be getting Carnivore soon, and I've been hearing some songs off of that. And I guess he's released, Body Count's released a couple singles. And if the rest of the album is anything like the singles that are coming out, it's going to be fucking brutal. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and throw down with 99 Problems, Body Count, First Dance, here on Coin Metal. And that was White Zombie with Welcome to Planet Motherfucker. Love that song. Anyway, as far as what we're going to get into, I'd actually dug around a little bit and found some tabs that I was comfortable with commenting on. And, so I figured that's what we're going to get into today. And let's start it off. I'm always interested in this particular subject because Mr. Vitalik has been trying to shift Ethereum into being POS from a proof of work coin migrating to a POS coin for about, I want to say, 2, maybe 3 years. Actually, it doesn't seem like it was that long between when Ethereum launched and they started talking about it being a POS coin. As a matter of fact, I think before it even launched, there was some confusion as to whether or not it was going to be a proof of work coin or a proof of stake coin. I'm not entirely certain on that. Don't quote me. But I'm sure you can look back in time and figure it out. But anyway, this project has been fraught with this reality, and they keep running into it again and again and again. And it's that the devs can say all kinds of nice words, and they can have their ideas about how the network should work, what direction the coin should take, what kind of new adaptations should be incorporated into the coin or the platform or whatever. And they're doing all of this without really thinking about, will the miners do it? Will users actually use it? It's one thing for there to be a capability available, but there's another thing when people are actually utilizing it and doing so according to the roadmap or plan that you establish for it. And it's not like it's out of spite or anything like that. It's that people have their own interests to account for, and that comes first. And if your code, no matter how wonderful it is, if it isn't serving people's interests, they're not going to use it. It's very, very simple. Anyway, so I got this article. It's on Cointelegraph.com, and this is by Rachel Wolfson. Vitalik Buterin reveals Ethereum 2.0 roadmap to Cointelegraph. And so no penis. Ethereum co-founder Vitalik Buterin discussed plans for Ethereum 2.0 during an exclusive interview with Cointelegraph on February 19th at the Stanford Blockchain Conference. Buterin explained that the major development for Ethereum 2.0 over the course of this year is the launch of Phase 0. He said, quote, Phase 0 is the first phase of the Ethereum 2.0 launch. This will release the proof-of-stake network, which will come online this year. While the official launch date of Phase 0 is still unknown, Buterin explained that Phase 0 is close to having a multi-testnet and audits of the existing code. He noted. A lot of optimization is currently underway with Phase 0, which we will continue to refine over the next few months. Ethereum 2.0 Roadmap. Following the launch of Phase 0, Buterin stated that Ethereum 2.0 will begin as an independent proof-of-stake network. He explained that the purpose behind this is to allow the proof-of-stake system to start off slowly in order to prove its capabilities over time. He explained, Ethereum 2.0 will start with no applications and will have a small number of validators. Buterin noted that Phase 1 of Ethereum 2.0 will launch next, which will enable sharding. According to a blog post from Ethereum 2.0 testnet client Prismatic Labs, Ethereum 2.0 will contain a central blockchain known as the Beacon Chain. This will coordinate all 64 side chains called shards. Oh my god. This post explains that every shard will act as a full proof-of-stake system containing an independent piece of state and transaction history. Instead of processing all network transactions, each node will only process transactions for a certain shard. If implemented correctly, sharding would provide a solution for Ethereum's scalability problem without compromising the network's security and decentralized nature. Buterin noted that once Ethereum 2.0 network becomes fully robust, Ethereum 1.0 will merge into the 2.0 system, completing the transition. Staking concerns. Ethereum 2.0's development team had an Ask Me Anything session on Reddit on February 5th. Cointelegraph reported that during the event, the primary concern from the Ethereum community was the transition to a POS system. As a POS network, asset holders are rewarded for pledging their coin holdings to protect and validate the network. Ethereum 2.0 will require 32 Ether to participate as a validator. Additionally, one user noted during the AMA that the increasing wealth disparity seen in a staking model could potentially reward the wealthy for having more money. However, Danny Ryan from the Ethereum Foundation argued that proof-of-stake systems are fairer than proof-of-work systems. He said, quote, in both cases, the owning of an asset allows for seeking gains on that asset. The difference between the two is that in POS, the mapping of capital to gains is much more direct and fair. I wholly disagree with that. Are new scaling solutions creating less urgency for Ethereum 2.0? Buterin also noted that while Ethereum 2.0 is being tested and developed, new scaling solutions are being created that are compatible with Ethereum and capable of solving some of its main challenges. For instance, optimistic rollups are second-layer constructions that enable smart contracts to scale. Co-founder and chief scientist at Off-Chain Labs, Edward Felton, told Cointelegraph that its product, Arbitrum Rollup, is now live on the testnet. Arbitrum is the first rollup system for general smart contracts. Felton explained, quote, Off-Chain Labs is trying to scale up and improve the performance and lower the cost of smart contracts on Ethereum in a way that is compatible with existing Ethereum blockchains. According to Felton, the legacy applications written as Solidity smart contracts can be fed into the Arbitrum tool chain. This creates a custom sidechain for developer applications, yet security for these applications is anchored on the Ethereum main chain, he said. Quote, there's a group of participants in the application that will work together to advance the application. However, this will be checked on the Ethereum main chain, ensuring that security is anchored there. We move almost all the work off of the main chain into the participants' application, which are really just regular computers that are not part of the Ethereum chain. Felton also made it clear that Off-Chain Labs is not competing with Ethereum, but rather offering a compatible second-layer solution to solve performance and scalability issues. When asked if a solution like Ethereum 2.0 is needed with Arbitrum in place, Felton said, quote, "We hope that Ethereum 2.0 brings the expected benefits of Layer 2 solutions like ours, but we're not waiting around for that to happen." Yeah. I don't think there's going to be an actual migration to Ethereum 2.0. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I think in the longer term, what's going to end up happening is that the gas requirements for applications is going to go down, because the value of Ethereum is going to go up. And also, I believe that the network speed itself will expand, will increase. I don't know what their limitations are as far as their transactions per second, but I know they have a much faster confirmation rate than the Bitcoin network. So I think it's like 30 seconds or less or some shit like that. I don't know. But it's pretty fucking fast by comparison to Bitcoin. So the necessity to actually go off-chain, I believe, is not really there. I think you can do pretty much everything you want to do on-chain. And that the way to do it, you know, if there's some sort of issue with regard to the block space, that it should expand just like Bitcoin actually should expand its block size limit, and that would facilitate for cheaper transactions. And also, like I said, the lowering of the gas requirements for applications, I think that would help out quite a bit in kind of pushing adoption. You know, I mean, I think the lower the barrier to entry, the easier it is for people to transition into these currencies and these systems. And, you know, I can understand the desire to switch to proof of stake just because of the validator scheme, but there's already language out there in legislation concerning validators. You know, they don't talk about miners. And personally, I believe it's because they intend to not have miners, for there not to be miners like you and me. But I don't think it's ever going to come to that, because the whole thing that makes these coins worth a shit is the work that you do with your computers or with your miners. Regardless of whether we're talking about GPUs, ASICs, FPGAs, whatever, it's all about your personal interest. And so it's like they're trying to sell it back to you. You know, it's like, oh, we'll do all the mining for you. You don't have to worry about that. You can just do your transactions on our network. And people will pay you in our coin. And then you're like trapped within our coin until you can get it to an exchange and sell it and all that other shit. But yeah, so I think that we're still going to see Ethereum as a proof of work coin within, I would say, well within the window that they're talking about. You know, and I don't know. There's been some janky stuff that's been performed on networks since Bitcoin started, where there have been developments that developers have wanted, and where they've done certain things in implementations in order to just trick people. And they kind of get away with it for a little while, and then most of their miners bail. because it's clear that they can't trust the development community. I think that this fact has not gone away with time. And I don't believe that it really makes any difference who's actually trying to pull it. If there is any kind of deception like that, where they're just like, okay, exchanges, can Ethereum 2.0 as Ethereum, quit bothering to look at the main chain and just trust us. If that kind of thing were to happen and the exchanges were to acquiesce to that, Ethereum would lose pretty much whatever credibility they have left from the fucking DAO hack. Because they literally rolled the fucking transactions back, like just to, imagine that history was written on a big old chalkboard, and they just wanted to go back with an eraser and erase several segments of it, and then start from the beginning of the area that they erased, like it never happened. And that's what caused the first split with Ethereum Classic breaking off. And I don't know, I think that ultimately this push to try and get Ethereum to be a proof of stake coin, after people signed up to be a proof of work coin, bought all kinds of hardware to mine it as a proof of work coin, and turning around and saying to those people, hey, we want to turn this coin into a proof of stake coin. Sorry, thanks so long, and thanks for all the fish, or hashing power in this case. Just fuck off. Thanks for all the network support you've given us for the last 5 years, but your hardware is not deprecated, and we're turning Ethereum into a proof of stake coin. So none of your hardware that you currently have is going to work with it. And best of luck to you. Do you really think that kind of thing is going to happen? I think that a lot of the hashing power on the Ethereum network is actually instances on AWS. And that what they're hoping is that they're going to be able to 51% attack the network from AWS, once enough of the legitimate organic miners drop off of the network, that they're going to be able to overpower them and force through the changes that they want to make. And I don't see that happening, especially if there's enough economic incentive to keep Ethereum as a proof of work coin, which I believe there is. It's still one of the top 5 coins, and from what I understand, it's at least nominally profitable to be mining their coin. And it's got a lot of growth potential. If they can ever get over this idea that any one segment within their community has like grand say over what everybody else does. It's a terrible tendency, and the fact that there is such a thing as an Ethereum Foundation, it's kind of a how should I say this? It kind of fucks up the incentives, because there's the expectations of the Ethereum Foundation, and if you're not meeting them, what does that really say, And I don't know. It's interesting, and I think that, like I said, over the next year, we're still not going to see this transition over to POS. It's just not going to happen. And it's precisely because of this sort of thing. I got this article here. It's on Cointelegraph.com. It's by Samuel Hague. And I think it was authored 7 hours ago, but let's refresh that. Just check and verify here. 11 hours ago. There we go. Raven coin community clash over mining algorithm continues. The Raven coin community continues to argue over what mining algorithm the project should adopt in the future to better deter ASICs, despite Raven coin conducting a hard fork intended to bolster ASIC resistance just 5 months ago. Tron Black, Raven coin's lead developer, posted an update on February 18th stating that the, quote, work is ongoing to test various alternative algorithms for mining Ravencoin. He added that the campaign to change the algorithms is being led by, quote, a large contingent of GPU miners. Quote, several algos have been tried with benchmarking. Some will not work because they are too slow for validation, Black continued. The post asserted that, quote, 5 major features had been activated on the security tokens platform mainnet during February, including messaging, dividends, and restricted assets. The updates also saw RVN's KYC tagging system go live. Ravencoin versus ASICs. Ravencoin's white paper published on April 3, 2018 advanced ASIC resistance as a core utility offered by the project's X16R mining algorithm, which is designed to, quote, prevent immediate dominance by mining pools and future dominance by ASIC mining equipment. The document argued that ASIC resistance is needed to, quote, allow the mining rate to increase and gradually disperse RVN to holders that understand the value of the platform. Evidence suggesting that ASICs may have infiltrated the network first emerged during July 2019 when an article published on Medium purported to show a single mining pool had come to accumulate 10% to 20% of mined blocks during February 2019 before growing to dominate 30% to 40% of the network the following month. As of July 11, 2019, the mystery pool was mining 45% of RVN blocks. Ravencoin hard fork. On October 1, 2019, Ravencoin executed a hard fork to transition its current X16RV2 algorithm. Despite not being intended as a permanent solution, the change was expected to thwart the presence of ASICs for the foreseeable future. Despite the fork, concerns around the reoccurring dominance of unknown mining pools quickly resurfaced, including speculation that FPGA developers have sought to subvert the narrative in the development channels of the project's Discord channel. On January 30th, 2020, Tron Black published a post declaring it was evident that ASICs were again mining Ravencoin. The post also outlined proposals for Ravencoin's future X16RE algorithm, with a recent update indicating that RVN developers are currently exploring implementing ProgPow into the mining algorithm. Ravencoin listed on OKX and SFOX. Despite the lack of a clear resolution to Ravencoin's algorithm debate, the open source project has seen increasing support from notable exchanges. On February 19th, RVN's pairings went live on OKX and SFOX. Tron emphasized that the OKX listing would, quote, bring awareness of Ravencoin to entire new segments of the globe, adding that the exchange would be providing the market budget to promote the launch. OKX's RVN/USDT market has generated $586,000 worth of trade in the past 24 hours, ranking it the third largest RVN pairing by daily volume. Interesting. But yeah, again, there's this thing where the miners want to mine it with ASICs, and the developers and the GPU miners don't want to. Well, hey, there's one way to do that, and that is to keep enough GPUs on the network to outnumber the ASICs. There you go. It's about the only way you can try and compete with ASICs is having more GPUs out there, dominating the network itself. And you know, it's tough. It's not impossible though. And there was something I read, and I'm not seeing the tab for it. But there was this guy who was presenting some sort of plan to repatriate like 30% of the mining that is happening on the Bitcoin network to the United States. Because originally the majority of the mining was happening here in the United States. Then about 60% of it migrated its way over to China due to cheaper electricity and closer source of hardware. And it seemed to me like the thrust of the article was that he was going to be making some sort of hardware here in the United States. I don't know. I'm going to see if I can find it. But I'm going to have to do that during the next music break. And let's go ahead and do that. And let's see where to go on music. It seems like my program is hanging up, so it could be that I've just got way too much shit going on my computer, and it's lagging everything down. I'm sure I can unclutter this a little bit later on, but not right now. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down with some music. A little bit of 12-Foot Ninja, One Hand Killing, here on Coin Metal. And that was Skindred with Nobody. And as usual, while I'm dinking around on the internet, looking at stuff, not only finding what exactly I wanted to cover for what I'd already had available here, but an additional one that I want to expand upon afterward. And so, the next one I got up here is by Audrey Shevchenko from The Picture. It's Andrei, my apologies. So yes, penis. Bitcoin's Lightning Network found more centralized than expected by researchers. No shit. The Lightning Network's LN configuration is becoming increasingly centralized, with multiple hubs being formed. This is the finding of a yet-to-be-reviewed research paper released on a preprint site, ARXIV, on February 7th. A team of academics from Switzerland, France, Italy, and Canada authored the paper. Jianheng Lin and Kevin Primiserio conducted the analysis, while others, including Blockstream Inc. researcher Christian Decker, designed the research. Core Periphery Model. The team gathered Lightning Network information for a period of 18 months from January 18, 2018 to July 13, 2019. Researchers then analyzed the payment network in terms of its node and wealth distribution. They discovered that the network showed high Gini coefficients, both in terms of node centralization and wealth distribution. Notably, the values were found to rise as more nodes were added. The distributions of Bitcoin across every node in the network was found to be extremely uneven as well. The Gini index amounts to 0.88, which corresponds to 10% of the nodes holding 80% of the Bitcoin. The goal of the research was to understand which idealized model best describes the network. While researchers identified the undirected binary configuration model, UBCM, as a good candidate, the network was found to be more centralized than expected. The researchers concluded, quote, "This suggests that the BLN, Bitcoin Lightning Network, is becoming an increasingly centralized network with more and more compatible with a core periphery structure, i.e. a hub and spoke model," which was asserted as early as, 4 fucking years ago when this thing was first started, or when it was first even theorized that we should do it. Continuing on. The UBCM system does imply a degree of centralization, which would result in the presence of several hubs. The actual network appears to be too reliant on them, which could make it a target for the so-called split attacks researchers argue. Oh gosh, I seem to recall us talking about that on Monday, or no, Wednesday rather. Continuing on. The research paper follows findings by BitMEX Research, focusing on the higher than expected amount of, quote, uncooperative closures. Lightning Network progress. The network is currently hosting more than 11,500 nodes with an average node capacity of $1,300 and average channel capacity of just under $240. The network had reached 10,000 nodes in September of 2019. The journey has also seen some stumbles, with the reports of users temporarily losing money through LN. A vulnerability was also disclosed in September, with some reports noting that it was exploited, quote, in the wild. In December, Bitfinex introduced LN support to make instant purchases through BitRefill. Seemed to me I saw something about BitRefill. I don't know. Might have to find that. But yeah, so this was predicted pretty much the entire time that LNs had been open as a possibility for transacting Bitcoin cheaply and quickly. And so, for me, it's not very surprising that this should be noted by these people. And in the longer term, I expect it to become even more centralized. And, if we were to examine the money behind the large hubs that are already existing, according to these charts, I would suggest that we'd probably find significant financing by a legacy payment services provider supporting the node. Meaning that it's somebody from either like MasterCard or Visa, Bank of America, US Bank, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, that one of these entities is actually supporting the nodes in question that are becoming hubs. But yeah, like I said, the hub and spoke model that was theorized a long time ago, and it's surprising to me that it's taken this long for anybody to note that that's the kind of progression that we're seeing on the payment channels or in Lightning Network. And so I got this paper here. It's 11 pages long, and I think we can get through it. But like I said, you don't have to be terribly technically minded. You just have to understand what Bitcoin does, how it does it, and how Lightning Network supposedly helps it out. If you understand those things and you understand the incentives behind Bitcoin and like the network dynamics of Bitcoin and whatnot, and you don't even have to understand them very technically to get that you're still working with a limited amount of block space, and eventually that block space is going to become more expensive because the block reward is not going to be enough to compensate the miners to keep the fucking network viable. And the data of highest integrity, safe from attack, that kind of thing. Oh man, that didn't turn out quite the way I thought it was going to. Anyway, continuing on. And this is on arxiv.org. Lightning Network, a second path towards centralization of the Bitcoin economy. And this is by Jianhong Lin, Kevin Primaserio, Tiziano Squartini, Christian Decker, and Claudio J. Tresson. So yes, penises. Abstract. The Bitcoin Lightning Network, BLN, a so-called second-layer payment protocol, was launched in 2018 to scale up the number of transactions between Bitcoin owners. In this paper, we analyze the structure of the Bitcoin LN over a period of 18 months, ranging from January 14, 2018 to July 13, 2019, at the end of which the network has reached 8,216 users. 122,517 active channels and 2,732.5 transacted bitcoins. Here we consider three representations of the BLN: the daily snapshot 1, the weekly snapshot 1, and the daily block snapshot 1. By studying the topological properties of the binary and weighted versions of the three representations above, we find that the total volume of transacted bitcoins approximately grows as the square of the network size. However, despite the huge activity characterizing the BLN, the Bitcoin's distribution is very unequal. The average Gini coefficient of the node strengths, computed across the entire history of the BLN, is in fact, kind of equal to 0.88, causing the 10% or 50% of the nodes to hold the 80% or 99% of the bitcoins at stake in the BLN, on average across the entire period. This concentration brings up the question of which minimalist network model allows us to explain the network topological structure. Like for other economic systems, we hypothesize that local properties of nodes, like the degree, ultimately determine part of its characteristics. Therefore, we have tested the goodness of the undirected binary configuration model, UBCM, in reproducing the structural features of the BLN. The UBCM recovers the disassociative and the hierarchical character of the BLN, but underestimates the centrality of nodes. This suggests that the BLN is becoming an increasingly centralized network, with more and more compatible with a core periphery structure, i.e. hub and spoke structure. Further inspection of the resilience of the BLN shows that removing hubs leads to the collapse of the network into many components, and evidence suggesting that this network may be a target for so-called split attacks. Introduction. The gain of popularity of Bitcoin has made apparent the problems in terms of scalability of the technology upon which it is based. Actually, that's not true. It's the direction of development in attempts to push it into being a Swift-style network instead of a peer-to-peer network where people like you and me are the fucking mining nodes of the network. Continuing on. In fact, only a limited amount of transactions per second, whose number is proportional to the size of a block and its release frequency, can be processed by Bitcoin. What they're talking about there is block size limit and confirm time. Continuing on. Can be processed by Bitcoin. This shortcoming may prevent the adoption of this payment network at a global scale. It hasn't yet, especially when considering that classic payment mechanisms, ergo traditional credit cards, are able to achieve tens of thousands of transactions per second. Not entirely the point. A naive and short-term solution would be represented by an increase of the block size. Larger blocks. That's not entirely naive, sir. However, larger blocks would require larger validation time, storage capability, and bandwidth costs, in turn favoring centralization, as fewer entities would be able to validate the new blocks that are appended to the blockchain. Moreover, centralization in the validation process would make the system less resilient, i.e. more prone to faults and attacks. I happen to disagree there. See, because there's this really interesting effect that does come with more users on a system that has bigger blocks, such as Bitcoin Cash. See, what happens is, as the actual number of transactions on the network goes up, so does the volume of transaction fees. And although they're relatively minimal right now, if the number of transactions were to be increased by, say, tenfold, which is not unreasonable, so would the number of transaction fees per block. And this is a metric of the Bitcoin Cash system that is not entirely considered in this whole ideal that if the blocks are bigger, that only a limited number of people would be able to participate in it. Let me tell you something. The Bitcoin network didn't become the biggest fucking network on the planet because the capacity for it to be there was already there. No. It became the biggest single network on the planet due to people out there in the wild deciding, you know what, I want to mine Bitcoin. I can get electricity really fucking cheap here, but you know what? The internet capacity sucks out here. So I'm going to throw a little bit of investment into the internet infrastructure here. I'm going to run some fiber optic lines to increase my local bandwidth capacity, and that increases the local bandwidth capacity for everybody in the fucking area. You know, you look at China having 60% of the Bitcoin network. That didn't happen because those little bitty villages out there in the middle of nowhere had nothing but a fucking coal power plant that they already had some fiber optic deployment. They didn't. People had to run the fucking cable out there. They had to run the internet out to these itty-bitty villages out there in the middle of nowhere that all they had going for them was either a coal-fired plant or a hydroelectric setup later on. What it tells you is that all that really needs to exist is a proper incentive. Why there hasn't been a higher migration to Bitcoin Cash, I'm not entirely certain, but I will tell you this. We will see it before we see a greater adoption of quote-unquote layer 2 solutions on the Bitcoin network. Anyway, continuing on. Let's see here. Let's see. Storage capacity and bandwidth costs in turn favoring centralization, as fewer entities would become able to validate the new blocks that are appended to the blockchain. Moreover, centralization in the validation process would make the system less resilient, i.e. prone to faults and attacks. And again, I have to disagree wholeheartedly with that. All there really has to be is enough incentive to drive people out in the middle of nowhere like me to invest in mining Bitcoin Cash, which there could conceivably be in the future. And all of this bullshit about faults and attacks and network latency, all that disappears because I'm filling one of the little blanks in the network that would otherwise exist if it was in fact centralized. Anyway, continuing on. The Bitcoin Lightning Network aims to break the trade-off between block size and centralization by processing most of the transactions off-chain. It is a layer 2 protocol that can operate on top of blockchain-based cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin. The origin of the BLN can be traced back to the birth of Bitcoin itself as an attempt to create payment channels across which any two users could exchange money without burdening the entire network with their transaction data, thus allowing for cheaper and faster transactions, as both the mining fees and the blockchain confirmation are no longer required. And yeah, I don't recall that being having come with the Bitcoin network white paper. or the Bitcoin white paper rather. The BLN can thus be seen as a solution that does not sacrifice the key feature of Bitcoin, i.e. decentralization, that characterizes its architecture, i.e. the number of computers constituting the network, its political organization, i.e. the number of individuals controlling the network, and its wealth distribution, i.e. the number of individuals owning the actual supply, while enhancing the circulation and the exchange of the native assets. That's not true either, but we're not going to get into that. The BLN has recently raised a lot of interest. Series argued that the BLN structure can be ameliorated to improve its security. Rohrer showed that the current BLN can be prone to channel exhaustion or attacks aimed at isolating nodes, thus compromising the node's reachability, the payment success ratio, etc. In this paper, we consider the BLN payment channels across a period of 18 months, i.e. from the 14th of January 2018 to the 13th of July 2019, and analyze it at both the daily and the weekly timescale. Our results show that the BLN is characterized by an unequal wealth distribution and by larger than expected centrality of nodes, thus suggesting that the BLN indeed suffers from the aforementioned centralization issue. Methods. Notation. Oh man, they got a whole bunch of math in here that I'm not going to read out. For each time, BLN can be described as a weighted undirected network with a total number of nodes, N1 represented by the N1 times or NT times NT symmetric matrix, blah blah blah, whose generic entry blah 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 indicates the total amount of money exchanged between I and J across all channels at time T. The total amount of money exchanged by node I at time T is blah 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 sigma to the n to the n to the t. A quantity that will also be called capacity. For the present analysis, we consider the BNL, whatever. I'm trying to get through all the math bullshit. And the T and a number of blah, blah, blah. Indexes or indices measuring the centrality of the node aim at quantifying the importance of a node in the network according to some specific topological property. According to the measures proposed so far, of particular relevance are the degree of centrality, the closeness of centrality, the betweenness centrality, and the eigenvector centrality. Let us briefly describe them. The degree centrality of node I coincides with the degree of node I, i.e. the number of its neighbors, normalized by the maximum attainable value, i.e. n minus 1. Let's see here. Let me just get down to the damn analysis. Let's see here. Centralization measures. The centrality indices defined above are all normalized between 0 and 1 and provide a rank of the nodes of a network according to the topological feature chosen for their definition. Sometimes, however, it is useful to compactly describe a certain network structure in its entirety. To the same, a family of indices has been defined, the so-called centralization indices, encoding the comparison between the structure of a given network and that of the reference network according to the chosen index. In mathematical terms, any centralization index reads, c to the square root of c, blah, blah, blah. Oh, Jesus. Oh, here we go. Benchmarking and observations. Besides providing an empirical analysis of the BLN, in what follows we also benchmark our observations against a model discounting available information to some extent. Like for other economic and financial systems, we hypothesize that local properties of nodes ultimately determine that BLN structure, specifically focus on degrees, and adopt the undirected binary configuration model as a reference model. The UBCM captures the idea that the probability for any two nodes to establish a connection depends on their degrees and can be derived within the constrained entropy maximization framework. The score function is represented by Shannon entropy, and it gives us a neat little equation there. And the constraints being represented in the sequence, blah blah blah, more math. Upon solving the aforementioned optimization problem 1819, those two are references. One derives the probability that any two nodes establish a connection, and it gives us a nice little equation. The unknown's x, representing the so-called range. Jesus Christ. My apologies. I skip over a lot of the math stuff because I can't just rattle it off. There's a sentence of terms and functions here that, if I were more mathematically minded, I'm sure I could just read it off and all the math people will be like, oh yeah, oh wow, yeah, cool. But, I'm not that guy. So, we're just going with what we've got here. Data. Here we go. Since payments in the Bitcoin Lightning Network are source routed and onion routed, the sender must have a reasonably up-to-date view of the network topology in order to pre-compute the entire payment route. Nodes in the BLN regularly broadcast information about the channels they participate in. Each time a channel is opened or any of its details changes, the two endpoints of the channel announce such changes to the rest of the network. This exchange of information, called gossip, allows other nodes to keep their view of the network topology up to date. An information that is used to initiate a payment. The network topology can be visualized by means of the so-called routing table. For this paper, we took regular snapshots of the routing table every 15 minutes between January 14th, 2018 at block height 503,816 to July 13th, 2019 at block height 585,844. These snapshots were then aggregated into time spans, each time span representing a constant state of a channel from its start to its end. In addition, this information is enriched with data from the blockchain, since every channel consists of an unspent transaction output on the Bitcoin blockchain. We can determine the size of a channel and its open and close dates within minutes. Other heuristics can be used to search for potential channels on the blockchain without involving the gossip mechanism. This allows us to put a lower bound on the completeness of our measurements. In the Bitcoin blockchain, the time between blocks is the Poisson distributed with an expected value of 10 minutes between blocks. On a single day, the expected number of new blocks added to the blockchain is 144. For the sake of simplicity and without altering in any way the results, we consider this number of blocks our natural time scale. For example, the blocks of the first day range from 503,816th one to the 503,959th one, while the blocks of the second day range from 503,960 to 504,103, or 504,103rd one. In this paper, 3 different representations of the BLN are studied: the daily snapshot one, the weekly snapshot, and the daily block snapshot. Even if the results of our analysis will be shown for the daily block snapshot representation only, a daily/weekly snapshot includes all channels that were found to be active during that day/week. A daily block snapshot consists of all channels that were found to be active at the time the first... Oh, damn. My apologies there. Were found to be active at the time the first block of the day was released. Hence, The transactions considered for the daily block representation are a subset of the ones constituting the daily representation. Results. Empirical analysis of the BLN binary structure. Figure 1 plots the evolution of the basic network quantities since launch of the BLN, i.e. the number of nodes, which is a proxy of the number of users, the number of links, and the link density. As it can be seen, although the network size increases, for the daily block snapshot N ranges from 2 to 6,476, and L ranges from 1 to 55,866. In particular, in the last daily snapshot of our dataset, we have 6,476 nodes and 54,440 links. It becomes sparser. However, two different regimes are visible. A first phase where a steep increase of N and L, decrease of P, takes place is followed by a phase during which a much smoother increase or decrease of the same quantities is observed. Further insight on the BLN evolution can be gained by plotting the link density. P equals 2L over N times N minus 1 versus the total number of nodes N, a trend whose functional form reads, and I'm not going to read it all out. However, such a functional form seems to describe quite satisfactorily the BLN evolution up to the period of when N is equal to 10 to the third. Afterwards, a different functional dependence seems to hold. Notice also that the value of the numerical constant C coincides with the value of the average degree, and since C equals 2L over N minus 1, and a whole bunch of other math that I'm not going to read, by imagining a growth process according to which each new node enters the network by establishing at least one new connection with the existing ones to ensure that L blah 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 whole bunch of math. In order to comment on the centrality structure of the BLN, let us explicitly draw it. Let's see here, and I'm going to open up Figure 2 here in another page. Figure 1 or 2 here. It's a whole different set of stuff on the end. And let's see here. Figure 2, the color online comparison between the largest connected component of the BLN, daily block snapshot representation on day 16. Left minus 95 nodes and 155 links are present on day 34. Right minus 359 nodes and 707 links are present. A visual inspection of the network evolution suggests the presence of a core periphery structure since its early stages. Section, i.e. the degree, the closeness, the betweenness, and the eigenvector centrality. Figure 3 shows that G is increasing for 3 measures out of 4, pointing out that the values of centrality are more and more unevenly distributed, irrespectively from the chosen indicator. The flat trend characterizing the closeness centrality could be explained by the presence of nodes with large degree, ensuring the vast majority of nodes can be reachable quite easily. On the other hand, the evolution of the centralization indices indicates that the BLN is not evolving towards a star graph, although the eigenvector centrality reaches quite large values in the middle stages of the BLN history. As anticipated above, imagining the picture provided by a star structure could provide a good description of the BLN topology is indeed too simplistic. Benchmarking the observations. Let us now benchmark the observations concerning the centrality and centralization indices with the prediction for the same quantities output by the UBCM. More specifically, we have computed the expected value of G, a bunch of math, and the corresponding error, explicitly sampling the ensembles of networks induced by the UCBM or UBCM. In figure 4, we plot and compare the evolution of the observed and expected values of G and C, both as functions of n. Such a comparison reveals that the UBCM tends to overestimate the values of the Gini index for the degree and closeness and the betweenness centrality, and underestimate the values of the Gini index for the eigenvector centrality. Let's see. He's got some shit there. The latter, in fact, seems to indicate a non-trivial, i.e. non-reproducible by lower-order constraints like degrees, tendencies of well-connected nodes to establish connections among themselves, likely with nodes having smaller degree attached to them. Such disassociative structure could explain the less-than-expected level of unevenness characterizing the other centrality measures. In fact, each of the nodes behaving as the, quote, leaves of the hubs would basically have the same values of degree, closeness, and betweenness centrality. On the other hand, the betweenness and the eigenvector centralization indices suggest that the BLN structure is indeed characterized by some kind of more than expected star-likeness. The deviations from the picture provided by such a benchmark, however, could be explained by the coexistence of multiple star-like substructures. It's giving us a whole bunch of neat graphs. Let's see here. Let's get back to it. Oh, we kind of skipped ahead with that one. That's why that was. Oh, it's actually the same stuff that we were commenting on before. Okay. Figure 3, color online. Top panels, evolution of the Gini index for the degree, closeness, betweenness, and eigenvector centrality. God damn it. I gotta do something here. To turn that off. Okay. Can't stand fucking whole bunch of notifications going on in the background while I'm doing this. I'm like, dude, I'm live. Let's see here. I'll go ahead and do that. There we go. Alright. Core periphery detection. A clearer picture of the BLN topology structure is provided by the analysis aimed at clarifying the presence of a, quote, core periphery-like organization. Inspecting the evolution of the bimodular surprise S across the entire considered period reveals that the statistical significance of the recovered core periphery structure increases, a result leading to the conclusion that the description of the BLN structure provided by such a model becomes more and more accurate as the network evolves. As an example, Figure 5 shows the detected core periphery structure on the snapshots depicted in Figure 2. The nodes identified as belonging to the core and to the periphery are, respectively, colored in blue and yellow. Empirical analysis of a BLN weighted structure. And let us now move to the empirical analysis of the weighted structure of the BLN by inspecting the evolution of the total capacity, W, of i.e. the total number of bitcoins within the BLN, daily block snapshot representation. Figure 6 shows the evolution of W as the function of the network size N. The trend shown in the same figure reads y to an to the B. Let's see here. A whole bunch of math. Conclusions. We're just going to skip ahead to the conclusions here. The Bitcoin Lightning Network is a sort of layer 2 protocol aimed at speeding up the blockchain by enabling fast transactions between nodes. Originally designed to allow for cheaper and faster transactions without sacrificing the key feature of Bitcoin, i.e. its decentralization, it is evolving towards an increasingly centralized architecture, as our analysis reveals. In particular, its structure seems to become increasingly similar to a core periphery one, with well-connected nodes clustering together, as revealed by the study of the eigenvector centrality. More precisely, our analysis reveals the presence of many star-like substructures with the role of centers played by hubs, seemingly acting as channel-switching nodes. Such a tendency seems to be observable even when considering weighted quantities, as only about 10%, 50% of the nodes hold 80% or 99% of the bitcoins at stake in the BLN, on average across the entire period. Moreover, the average Gini coefficient of the nodes strengthens. Let's see here, Figure 4, top panel's comparison between the observed Gini index for closeness, betweenness, and eigenvector centrality, blue dots, and their expected value computed under the UBCM, red diamonds, for the daily block snapshot representation. Once the information contained into the degree sequence is properly accounted for, a residual tendency towards centralization is still visible. Bottom panels, comparison from the observed degree, and this is a description of figure number 4 here. It's quite interesting. Let's see. And so yeah, that was the totality of it. And it gives us neat little maps here, and it demonstrates pretty much a hub and spoke model. And I've heard about at least 25 of these nodes belonging to one entity, and that they own like the vast majority of the Bitcoin. I think it's like LNBIG or something like that. That they own the majority of the Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. But you know, there's a reason why when I went through all of this, and it's because there's a lot of legislation out there already existing concerning this stuff. I mean, by some stretch of the imagination, a Lightning Network node could be defined as a validator because it is existing outside of the Bitcoin network, i.e. it is not a miner on the main network. It is a validator of transactions outside of the Bitcoin network. And this would place it in a trusted position, a trusted third-party position. And I've had a bazillion and one little people on Twitter assert to me that it is not custodial. This whole report is basically telling you that the vast majority of the Bitcoin that's being transacted and the vast majority of the node ownership seems to be a tiny number of people, or a relatively small number of people, that own connectedness to pretty much everything else. So, I mean, there might be a ton of smaller users out there, 11,000 of them. But a significant number of the bigger users out there that are carrying the bigger amounts of liquidity on their nodes is a small number of people. It's probably only like 8 entities that own all of the big hubs. And so what that breaks down to is they're probably all representatives or proxies for legacy payment service providers, and they're trying to establish themselves in this second layer. It's predictable, completely predictable. In this way, what they're talking about with regard to the centralization, I believe it's a product of something that I've been describing as a failure of Lightning Network or anything else that's built as a second layer on Bitcoin transactions. Is that you're not actually going to get free of the dependency of the transaction fee. You have to pay the transaction fee to set up the payment channel, right? if you're trying to escape the limitations of the blockchain and the cost of the transaction fee, you're going to have to pay somebody else to pay it. You know, maybe you can't pay the $50 for the transaction fee. It's just not practical for you to pay the $50 transaction fee. But you could take your, $2,000 worth of Bitcoin and you could hand it off to Blue Wallet, and they could handle the transaction fee for you, or they might charge you a percentage of the transaction fee to establish the payment channel, and they're hooking you and another 500 users up on the same payment channel, if not adding more as time goes on, and you're not bearing the transaction fee, but they are. And this puts them in a position of being a trusted third party, because you're relying on them to not only hold on to your funds, custodian, but to faithfully transact your funds to the people that you're trying to transact with. This means they're in a position to say, no, I don't like that guy. I'm not going to let you transact with them. There goes permissionless. That's one of the reasons for using Bitcoin, is that you can transact with whomever you want, whenever you want, suddenly taken away by the fact that you are limited to using a third party in order to transact your Bitcoin. And while this is not currently being exercised, I believe it's setting up a pretext by which, after a dependency is grown amongst the general public on these type of transaction networks, that the IRS and other financial authorities are going to be poking their heads around in Lightning, and they're going to be going to people like BitRefill and BitGo and other entities that are maintaining huge nodes and facilitating Lightning Network transactions for people, and they're going to say, hey, who you been doing transactions for? Give us your fucking records now, or we'll shut you down. This is the problem with having a third party facilitate it for you. And if they have to comply, that means they have to be keeping records. And that means they have to hire somebody to maintain the machines that those records are kept on, and they have to keep those compliant, or they get shut down by the regulatory entity that's regulating them. And I can't count how many people laugh at me for saying this. But all I can say is thank God for altcoins, because I do believe the hammer will fall on this shit. They've been planning it since at least 2013, if not a little bit earlier than that. And we're pretty much seeing it unfold as I'd expected, where we are going to see the use on directly on the Bitcoin network. And I don't really think it'll ever get this far. I think that there will be a significant portion of the transactions are happening off-chain, and that there's going to be some fuck-up where somebody's funds get ganked, or the channel gets closed and the funds evacuated by an adversarial actor, and all of a sudden there's going to be all kinds of regulatory requirements placed on these individuals, and it's going to place Bitcoin out of the viability as a payment network at all, as either an on-chain network or even an off-chain network to piggyback all your fucking Lightning Network transactions on, and all your sharding and all that other bullshit. And we're going to get back down to people understanding that if you want to participate in these currencies, if you want to use these currencies as money, the best way to do it is be a fucking miner. Host a node. Be a part of the network. You can at least trust that it's decentralized out to you by your, just via the simplicity of your participation. This is a fact of cryptocurrencies that is not stressed at all in these articles that we read, and I find it very, very disappointing. Not even in this paper, they're not talking about those nodes belonging to individuals, even though probably the vast majority of those nodes do belong to individuals such as you and me. They might not have more than $200 on their node, but that's beside the point. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. I got some Mastodon playing. I hardly ever play any Mastodon on here. It's very disappointing. It's good music. Let's go ahead and get into that. Let's see here if I can find him. Mastodon. Aha! Here we go. Oblivion by Mastodon here on CoinMetal. If I can get it to play. Come on. Don't hang up on me. Do it! There we go. And that was Ministry with Rio Grande Blood. So, as I was saying before I cut it off there, the issues that I see with Lightning Network and other off-chain solutions, these guys have noted it, and really what I believe is going on with regard to the number of nodes dropping off is between PETA and the increasing cost of transaction fees, that we're seeing a reduction in the number of people that can afford the time and effort and PETA and money to maintain a node. And that people are just understanding that it's not actually financially feasible to do it on the scale that an individual would do it on. That it's not actually providing them with enough value in transaction fees to make it worth it. And this is predictable. You'd have to be handling thousands of transactions per month for people in order to make it worth it. Well, in order to do so, you have to be hosting enough volume on your node to facilitate enough transactions for it to happen like that. But anyway, it is with that I'd like to draw this episode to a close. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And as far as our last dance is concerned, I haven't picked anything out, as usual. I like to leave it to the last minute, kind of surprise everybody, including myself. But I've been dying to play this song for a little while, and so here it is. Machine Head, Block, Last Dance here on CoinMetal. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent weekend. Good night.